Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo, with your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to a brand new week, a brand new episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you, as always, to everybody out there for watching, for listening, following, subscribing. I do appreciate y'all very, very much. For the first time since January of this year, we actually have a Buffalo Bills game to be able to kind of sink our teeth into a little bit, break down. I'm going to go over some of my personal biggest takeaways from the Buffalo Bills preseason opening 33-6 loss. Quite frankly, a debacle to the Chicago Bears. Like I said, this game is a lot less meaningless as opposed to the last time the Bills played a football game against an opponent, which of course was their playoff loss in a divisional round to the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, stakes don't matter at all compared to that, especially. But it's a game, and we're going to talk about some of our takeaways today. I want to say this too. So I've seen a lot, and I've watched and listened to a lot of Bills content creators, media people out there who have put out their post-game reactions in the minutes that come. So I'm recording this now on a Sunday afternoon. So it is probably not quite 24 hours, but almost 24 hours removed from this game. I do that, at least this week, I wanted to do that for two reasons. Number one, I tend by nature to be a huge knee-jerk reactor. I'm pretty well known for it. I think it's just in my DNA at this point. It don't matter if it's the AFC Championship game. It don't matter if it's a regular season game. Doesn't matter if it's a preseason game. Don't even matter, quite frankly, if it's Bills training camp practice. I tend to, in the moment, kind of overreact and insert some emotion into a lot of my takes, whether that's intended or not. That's just the way it is. By doing this, the next day, I kind of have had some time to kind of step back and just reflect. I've watched the game again, as painful as that may be. I went through and I watched at least most of the game. I fast forwarded through some parts here and there, but I watched a lot of the game for a second time. So I wanted to make sure that some of the opinions that my naked eye saw the first time, that they would be the same the second time around. So that's one of the reasons why. And another reason why I like doing this 24 hours after the fact, as opposed to, say, immediately after the game, is that it gives me a really good opportunity to kind of get a pulse of the temperature of what fans are thinking about a game, whether they play well or whether they don't. Obviously, in this case, no beating around the bush here, the Buffalo Bills did not play well. And you got your social media mixes, I would suspect. In some cases, the sky's fallen, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then in other cases, it means nothing. Nothing means anything. No game plan, yada, yada, this and that. And it's just, I don't buy that either. I'm not, the game in terms of the standings means nothing. In terms of the big picture, probably means nothing. But I won't go as far to say that nothing that we saw on Saturday means anything, because I think there are some things that stood out, obviously, in a 33-6 loss, mostly negative, that do have some, at least potential impact on this football team as we get ready to get this season started now in just a few weeks. So I kind of don't buy that extreme either on social media, but it's always interesting to kind of get a pulse for what is going on. But anyway, in terms of this game, this won't be a terribly long episode. Tomorrow being, well, most of you are actually listening or watching this on Monday, so I should say maybe later tonight for most of you. I think I'm going to be live. Joe from Queens, Monday night, either 9:30 p.m. Check my Twitter at Patrick Moran TV or their YouTube channel. We'll put up a live notification. But going to go over some parts of this game with Joe and some big picture stuff, and I'm sure he's got a lot of shit to rant on. Joe from Queens very well at this point. But anyway, I'm going to have him on Monday, probably start to turn the page and turn our attention towards Pittsburgh and just some other things going on with the Bills after that for the week. But make sure you tune into that tomorrow or tonight, depending on when you're checking this episode out. Anyway, I want to put some perspective. We need to preface some things talking about this game, preseason opener again at 33-6, a lopsided loss to the Chicago Bears. Before diving into game takeaways, like I said, some big picture perspective. And this is important stuff to know. And it's not necessarily me just downplaying every single thing that I saw, because I'm not. And you'll know that as you listen to this episode. But, I mean, let's keep shit kind of real here. Josh Allen played one drive and 3 snaps. The Bills, I believe it was 3-3 or 6-3 they were down when the starters were still in. And the Bills were moving the ball with Josh Allen when the first quarter came to an end. And Sean McDermott, understandably so, and I completely agree with it, didn't even want him to finish that second drive. So Josh Allen played one drive, 3 snaps. That's important to know. Ed Oliver played quite literally one snap. He went down with the scary because he went down, but one first play of the game, literally, for the Bills. He goes down with a knee, goes in a medical tent, comes back out. Turns out he was okay, wanted to go back in the game. Sean McDermott, again, correctly said, no, that shit ain't happening. But anyway, Ed Oliver played one snap, which, by the way, that one snap that Ed Oliver played, that's one more snap than Matt Milano, Von Miller, and Daquan Jones played combined. So that's 4 of your 11 starters on defense, 4 of your best starters on defense that played a combined total of 1 play. All right. Now, in the case of Matt Milano and Von Miller, rest. Von Miller historically really has never played in the preseason, doesn't really need to. In terms of Matt Milano, it's about load management and just getting him ready to ramp up. Again, all decisions that Sean made that I completely agree with. In the case of Daquan Jones, he's nursing a groin injury, and the last thing you're going to do is rush him back for a preseason game, especially when you're a 32-year-old veteran like Daquan Jones is. So anyway, my whole point is this. 4 of the 11 starters, or key contributors, I should say, at least on defense, didn't even play in this game. All right. Even Josh Allen admitted in his post-game presser, the Bills did not game plan whatsoever for what the Chicago Bears may do, especially defensively. Chicago is running some defensive line stunts and things like that. The Bills did not practice for it. They didn't prepare for it. They ran a very basic offense. They only ran like 3 or 4 different running plays. They did not care what kind of look Chicago was giving them. That's not, from the Bills' perspective, what this was about. So again, it's important to notice that, or to point that out, I should say. Teams ain't showing shit in the preseason. The Bills among them. Again, the Bills are not going to do anything in the preseason that they don't want 31 other teams to see. So you didn't get their best shot. Chicago's second preseason game, too, when that matters as well. This was the first time the Bills played an opponent all summer long. Not the case for the Bears. The Bears had an extra week of practice. They have already played a game. They had the Hall of Fame game last week, so this was their second game, which for the second and third units especially, that matters. They were a little more prepared, and some of their second and third stringers that are fighting for roster spots, just like the Bills guys are, they've been through it. They went through it last week, so that matters, So that is a factor as well. Now, all that said, the fact that I have to sit here right now and explain all these prefaces on why the Bills sucked, all these points that I'm hammering home to you right now about how unimportant the preseason really is, it kind of illustrates how bad the Buffalo Bills looked on Saturday. And it was bad, okay? It's okay to say that. This was a bad performance by the Buffalo Bills on Saturday. What you think about the preseason, what you think the Bills are trying to get out of it, any way you look at it, this was just a bad, rotten, awful. Let's just be honest here, man. It's okay. This was an awful performance by the Buffalo Bills. This ain't going to define their season. Like, it's not time to hit the panic button, but let's just call it what it is. You were excited to wake up on Saturday and watch the Buffalo Bills playing a preseason game. And going by what we saw on the television set, or if you were in the stadium for 3 hours, it looks like you were a lot more excited to watch the Bills play than the Bills looked about playing a football game themselves, which I don't like that. Sean McDermott teams are tough. And I know they have a preseason. Like last year, they were awful against Pittsburgh in the preseason. But typically, second and third unit players on the Buffalo Bills just seem to bring more energy, play with more of a sense of urgency. Preseason or not, game plan or not, basic vanilla offense, defense or not, special teams or not. It just felt like there wasn't a lot of energy on that Buffalo Bills sideline on Saturday. And I'm not quite sure what to make of that. I'm not going to worry about that. But I'll say this. My big overall takeaways, and we'll get into some individual things like throughout this episode today that'll follow here. But here's my three biggest takeaways. Number one, there is absolutely zero that I was either mildly to moderately or maybe even significantly concerned about with the Buffalo Bills going into this game that I feel even remotely better about after this game ended. Nothing that I saw on Saturday that I had some lingering concerns or maybe even doubts about. Nothing I saw on Saturday alleviated 1 ounce of concern following this game. I've been concerned about the safety position, starters and backups. And it's easy to just say, well, Bishop's hurt, Edwards is hurt. You got some new guys in. I'm also talking about the starters. I'm talking about Taylor Rapp, and I'm talking about potentially, likely at this point, DeMar Hamlin. Nothing I saw on Saturday from the safeties, from starter to third unit, alleviated any concern that I had before this game. Bottom of the wide receiver depth. We got a lot of names out there, but not a lot of proven track record, and didn't see a lot from what I liked, and especially the offensive line depth too. That they had a bad game on Saturday, and again, I know Chicago was doing some things, and they had some of their guys who were a little more ramped up playing their second game. I get all that, but offensive line depth has been a concern of mine all summer, and there was nobody who stuck out in a positive way to me that made me say, oh, you know what? I could feel really good. If Connor McGovern goes down, if Deion Dawkins goes down, this guy's going to get plugged in, and I'm going to feel good about it. Nothing I saw on Saturday suggests that I'm going to be able to feel good about it, at least right now as things stand. So that's a take. I also, and this is kind of a new one for me, at least anyway, there's at least one position right now on this football team that I think could really use an upgrade that I didn't think much about before the game. And that's quarterback. Shane Michelle does not surprise me. We'll talk about him in a few minutes, but I really like in this preseason game and the camp practices that I've been to. I have not liked what I saw from Mitch Trubisky. Mitch Trubisky can move around. I've always felt like Mitch Trubisky holds the ball for too long, and we saw some of that on Saturday. He's not decisive, and he has not been accurate. And it makes me wonder, depending on, how the preseason plays out with other teams, what quarterbacks might be out there in the waiver wire. Do the Bills go get themselves another quarterback? Like, Michelle's never making the team to begin with, but I'm starting to wonder if he's even made the practice squad. So that's a takeaway. Quarterback position looked terrible on Saturday. And then my kind of last big takeaway for this game is I think two of the biggest winners from this game, maybe two guys who quite literally did not even play because they were injured. They were out with an injury, and I think they may have benefited by not playing as much as 20 to 25 players on this football team benefited by actually being out there and being in uniform. And I'll get to those guys here in just a minute. In terms of like specific takeaways, I'll say this. I think you're listening to this, watching this hopefully on Monday. Practice probably ain't going to be fun for the Buffalo Bills on Monday. Sean McDermott, I can imagine, is pretty angry because preseason or not, again, how much game planning and design went into trying to win this football game. Regardless of any of that, preseason or not, the Buffalo Bills got their asses handed to them. They got their asses kicked all over the place by the Chicago Bears. All three facets: offense, defense, special teams, guys missing blocks, guys who could not get off blocks, stupid penalties. I think the Bills had like 11 or 12 penalties. I think like maybe 8 of them are pre-snap penalties. Again, preseason or not, bunch of new players or not, practice is probably not going to be fun. And Sean McDermott, maybe hinted a little bit here and there, just talked about the standard not being good enough, basic vanilla answer during his presser, seemed to be in good spirits. But knowing Sean McDermott the way we do, I would imagine preseason or not, again, that he is probably stewing a little bit right now. So that is probably not going to be a fun place to be. Highmark Stadium, the practice facility for the Bills on Monday. One other take, and then I want to get to a quick break here. The Bills, I talked about a little bit here a few minutes ago. The Bills' offensive line, man, awful. The run blocking was awful. Overall, offensive line play was awful. The starters, which again, I put it this way. I'm not worried about the starters. I want to put that out there right now. Okay. 4 of these 5 guys were the starters at the same positions last year, and David Edwards was on this team last year. I don't like the fact that he has essentially been handed the starting right guard job, which is exactly what has happened. But anyway, he's a veteran. I'm not so much talking about the starting 5. Again, they didn't prepare. Connor McGovern talked about it specifically post game. They didn't prepare at all for what the Bears were going to do on defense. I get that part. But the offensive line depth, like that second unit, that third unit, which only one person on the third unit's got he's going to make the team, but no one else on that third unit is probably making this team. But still, regardless, the offensive line depth, not good at all. They could not run the ball, and I didn't like that. And I know, James Cook, Ray Davis, 7 carries for 3 yards combined on the first 3 drives. That was bad. A pretty brutal first quarter for the starters, and particularly Osiris Torrance, by the way. I counted, and again, hey, I get it, preseason, he's a veteran now, but I counted at minimum 3 times where he got beat clear as day here. And it weren't by no stunts. It was just by him missing a block or somebody just bouncing right off him. I'm looking forward to watching. Can't believe I'm looking forward to watching all 22 film, but I am. I'm looking forward to watching the film. I'm looking forward to seeing how the offensive line, like what they missed on. Was it the stunts? Was it things that the Bears were doing that the Bills weren't prepared for, which to some extent is true. But how much of that was just straight up, hey, Deion Dawkins went to block somebody and whiffed on him, So a lot of stuff to clean up when it comes to the offensive line. Anyway, not all bad, though. There were definitely some bright spots as well. We'll get into some of those, but some more negative things from this 33-6 Buffalo Bills preseason opening loss to Chicago right after this break. All right, I'm back here talking about some of my personal biggest takeaways from the Buffalo Bills preseason opening debacle at home in front of their own fans against the Chicago Bears. By the way, back to the offensive line. So on Saturday night, real quick side note here, I went to Resurgence Brewery downtown, met up with some people, including a pair of former Buffalo Bills offensive linemen, great players in their day, John Fina and Jerry Ostrowski, both of them still in this, they're still part of the fabric of Buffalo. They're into podcasting, them along with Joe Miller, the Overreaction Sports Network. They do a lot of good stuff there, a lot of good content, and they're going to be ramping that up as the season gets started too. But anyway, by nature, obviously, they're quite literally offensive linemen. And I was having a conversation with Jerry, and I realized halfway through, kind of feeling stupid talking about it, because I'm sitting here and I'm evaluating, what offensive lineman looks good and what they did right, what they did wrong, this and that. I'm just some schmuck with a microphone in front of me who knows football and can talk to an extent. But I said, why am I not picking the brain of a guy who quite literally played like 8 or 9 years with the Buffalo Bills, literally at offensive line? And I did. I started picking his brain a little bit, asking him how concerned I should be about the offensive line. And Jerry's response was not really at all. And then he kind of talked about how Chicago was doing some things, and the offensive line should be fine, which, again, it's not the starter so much I'm worried about. It's the depth. If Deion Dawkins goes down, if David Edwards goes down, if Connor McGovern goes down, what's behind them that's going to be able to plug in 20% of that offensive line or 40% of that offensive line because of injuries and still keep that offensive machine going? It's definitely a big concern of mine at this point. Somebody who's not a concern at all, Khalil Shakir. I thought Khalil Shakir looked great. 3 catches, 3 targets. Seems to be the norm with him. Has that 19, in a 19-yard catch where he caught a short pass and then had some separation after the catch to break away and get himself a nice gain. I can't tell you how much I love Khalil Shakir, man. And this was a nice little taste of what he could be in this offense, what I expect him to be in this offense, being a first team guy now, like a through and through first team guy. Like last year, he came on later in the season, kind of an afterthought early on. Khalil Shakir is not going to be an afterthought this time around. To me, I said this before, and I'm gonna die on the hill of this take. I think Khalil Shakir is Cole Beasley with another gear. Like he's a good route runner. He's got really good hands, catches the ball. You can count on him. He's reliable. But the difference between him and Cole, and this is no disrespect to Cole, man. Cole Beasley is one of the best slot receivers in the NFL for a number of years. But the difference that I see between them is Khalil could take a shorter pass, make somebody miss, make a move, and use athleticism to get an extra 10 to 15 yards that maybe Cole Beasley couldn't. That's why I talk about like that extra gear. I'm expecting big things from Khalil Shakir this year. I'm going to be honest with you. It would not surprise me in the least. And I know people want to say Dalton Kincaid, and it could happen. But for me, my money right now says Cole Beasley, not Cole Beasley. See, I said Cole Beasley. God damn it, I'm thinking about it already. Khalil Shakir is going to lead this team in catches and yards. It would not surprise me in the least. In terms of Keon Coleman, he looked all right. It was fine. And he's still got some work to do. Had a nice catch, a nice little route for a first down catch at third down. But, I need to be careful with this too because A, Mitch Trubisky was the quarterback at the time, and B, the Bills were not only were the Bills in the red zone, I think the Bills might have been inside the 7-yard line. So it's not like he had a lot of room to work with. But getting off the physical stuff is something that Keon Coleman, and again, he's just a rookie in his one preseason game in, but he's going to separation seemed to be part of the issue with Keon Coleman during the pre-draft process. And again, red zone, lots of factors, but I think you saw a little bit of that in this game against Chicago. Jalen Johnson was smothering him pretty well on back-to-back plays, I should say. I want to credit Dad Brown of Rochester, great reporter. He put out a tweet. I actually wrote it down, and I wanted to read it because I thought this described Keon Coleman pretty well in this game anyway. Thad said Keon got a fairly steady diet of Jalen Johnson that drive. He could not get free. Wasn't much threatening running routes. Had trouble getting off physical stuff on both end zone targets. Definitely an area where he needs work. Look, you can be excited about Keon Coleman. You can appreciate his upside. You saw firsthand, or you saw the highlight clips anyway. If you've been following, Keon Coleman has made a highlight catch at practice during camp almost daily. You can be really high on him as a player, but it's okay to say he's got things to work on. And this definitely is one of them. Physical corners are going to tie him up, and he's going to have to learn how to get off routes a little better and create separation. That's another thing when we go and watch the film over the next day or so that I'm looking forward to seeing. But all in all, pretty good. A nice little taste. In fact, Keon Coleman said it was a nice little taste in the locker room after the game. Curtis Samuel did not play in the first series, 3 snaps, which, whatever, who cares? It was Coleman and Shakir when they opened up with 12 personnel, and then MVS, I think, was on the 3rd snap. But anyway, second series, caught a quick screen from Josh, first play to second drive, bam, 15 yards. Love to see that. That's the play that the Bills seemed to run to Stephon Diggs last year, or 2 years, in the last couple of years, that just never seemed to work. Stephon Diggs, as great as he is, as many great things as he could do, catching those little quick screens and getting a first down out of them was not really part of his arsenal, which certainly is for Curtis Samuel. I expect Curtis Samuel to have a very quiet preseason because he's one of those guys, like Khalil Shakir is a slot guy. He's going to get open underneath. He's going to do things like that, run a little boundary stuff. You kind of know what you're going to get with him. Keon Coleman, ditto. Curtis Samuel is going to be one of those guys where I think the Bills really try to protect him for the rest of the preseason. Like, this was just a quick screen. Everybody knows that he's got that in his game, but him lining up in terms of like in the backfield or jet sweeps, things like that, I don't think you're going to really see much of any of that in the preseason, which of course I'm perfectly good with. But you could tell that Curtis Samuel How many snaps he gets, we'll see. But I feel like he's going to be like that utility knife with this Buffalo Bills offense. And I think catching that little screen was, again, using that word taste, was just a little taste of what he's going to do. I'm a big Curtis Samuel guy, and I like to see that screen. What I don't like, MVS, man. I gotta say, it's tough. I was high on the signing, guaranteed money too. So if he doesn't make this team, the Bills are gonna need some money, which they could do that. But I was high on the MVS signing. I liked everything about it. I'm like, all right, here comes a guy who has won before, a couple Super Bowls to his credit, a guy who suffers from drops, but a guy who has notoriously stepped his game up in the playoffs, which is something that I think too many guys on the Buffalo Bills roster don't do. Step up in the playoffs. But, dude, you got to make the team, man. And I don't know. MBS may be playing his way to a pink slip. He's had drops at camp. They've been pretty well documented. I think the first half of camp, he was literally a non-factor. I thought the second half of camp, he started to emerge more. Caught the last day of camp. In fact, he smoked Christian Benford, caught a long touchdown pass from Josh Allen. But you get into the preseason where the games, they don't count, but they count more than a practice does. And right through his hands, one target, ball goes right through his hands from Mitch Trubisky on Saturday. That's annoying. And when you factor in the Bills, are going to keep 5, maybe 6 receivers. And if MBS is going to be just that 5th or 6th receiver, he gives you 0 special teams value. I don't know. I went from thinking that MBS could have more receiving yards than Keon Coleman as a rookie, Keon Coleman. That was like my bold take going into camp. Now I'm not even certain that MBS is going to make this team. Now, what I will say is what we're seeing from MBS right now ain't no different than what everyone's seen from MBS over the last handful of years. It's not like the Bills signed this guy and said, oh, he's got great hands. Oh, shit, this guy's dropping the ball. I never saw that coming. Yeah, you did see it coming because you know his history. So it's not like he's doing something right now that the Bills didn't already, to some level, expect. But it's concerning. It is definitely concerning. I did find it notable, too. Like, you could tell him and Josh are really trying to form a bond. One of the very few cutaways that they had on the TV broadcast of Josh Allen talking to somebody on the bench was with MBS sitting right next to him. And look, there's still plenty of time. He can go out and have 2 nice catches against Pittsburgh, and we're not talking about this shit next week. But right now, based on his history of dropping passes, based on guys like Shavers fighting to make the bottom half of this roster who bring great value on special teams with MBS having none, I do think it's very fair to be concerned about MVS even making this football team right now. On the defensive side, I saw some juice that I like from Javon Sullivan. 2 nice flash rushes in the first half. I think he had 1 or 2 plays on run stops as well. Kid's a 5th rounder. He's raw. Don't expect too much from him maybe as a rookie, other than if he can get on the field, if he can be active on game days, and the Bills are, protecting the lead and the other team has to throw or is 3rd and long. He's that guy right now. I think he's a one-trick pony for the time being. But I can tell you this for certain. He's making this roster. Javon Sullivan, if it wasn't already obvious, it should be now. Javon Sullivan is going to be on this football team. He's going to be one of the 5 or 6 edge rushers that the Buffalo Bills put on the 53-man roster. It's happening. And he got off to a nice, impressive start on Saturday. I thought an impressive first half that nobody has really talked about all summer long, quite frankly. I thought Austin Johnson played well. He had 2 good run reps, a good pass rush. He got held once. And you could kind of tell, and this is one of the things, even going into the preseason with the Bills, one of the units that I have felt relatively good about, because I think Austin Johnson, for me, is a clear upgrade over Tim Settle or Poona Ford or Laval Joseph, Jordan Phillips. I think the Bills' defensive tackle position with Austin Johnson behind Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones is going to be much better. And I liked what I saw from Monster Johnson. One of the few guys on defense over the first two units anyway that I was pretty impressed with. KJ Hamler had the first crack at winning the return job. Very much a mixed bag. First kickoff he handles was a fumble. I know the win was definitely a factor, but that's bad. On the positive side, he had a 19-yard punt return, which is good. Hardy had an opportunity. He caught a fair, he made a fair catch, I should say. He should have let it go in the end zone, but he caught a punt inside like the 5-yard line. Very uneventful day. This is a position I've actually been looking forward to following, because it seems like it's going to be Hamler, or at least it should seem like it was going to be Hamler and Hardy to see who wins the kick returning job, punt returning job, because the loser of that is far from guaranteed to even make this roster. Like if KJ Hamler does not win the kick return job, I don't think KJ Hamler is going to be on this roster. If they're going to just keep a guy who can get downfield and use his speed, it's going to be MBS. So for KJ Hamler to have a role on this team, to make this team, I feel like he's going to have to win this job. And while he did have a nice punt return, the fumble on the kickoff definitely did not help his cause. Quarterbacks, I talked about this earlier. Just color me completely unimpressed with Mitch Trubisky. No less than 4 really bad throws in the first half. And he just holds the ball for so long. Even these guys are open underneath. Even some of the passes that were completed, it's like they could have got there earlier. 9 of 17 for 76 yards. Who gives a shit about his stats? Just telling you, I am not impressed with him at all. There's other quarterbacks that may become available, and I think the Bills would be foolish to not at least explore other possibilities, because as bad as Mitch Trubisky was, dude was Joe Montana compared to Shane Buechele. I got to say that, man. I feel like Shane Buechele may have quite literally played himself off the practice squad with his performance on Saturday. Just one drive specifically, but he overthrew a wide open KJ Hamler, and then the next play, just an awful telegraphed pick six to Micah Baskerville, a Chicago Bears linebacker. That didn't get any better after that. Just terrible. He was literally out there at times, and he's athletic, just running in circles. It's like, what are we doing here? Did not look good at all. I think the Bills, I'd be surprised at this point, actually, if the Bills don't explore bringing in another quarterback. Again, maybe it's not the number 2 behind Josh Allen, but at the very least, a guy get on the practice squad. Like maybe Bailey Zappi, who might not make the New England Patriots. They already got 3 other quarterbacks, 2 rookies, Jacoby Brissett, so there's no room for Bailey Zappi. Maybe the Bills take a look at him, get him on their practice squad. He would be an upgrade over Shane Buechele. And I know a lot of people out there are saying, and rightfully so, hey, if Josh Allen goes down, it really don't matter who the backup is, the season's shot. That's not wrong. But I'll say this too. When you got guys at training camp, and this still, by the way, training camp's not over. Training camp's over for us. Like we ain't going to St. John's Fisher to watch the Bills in camp and practice, but they're still practicing. They're still camp. They're still getting ready for the season. And you still got 2 preseason games as well. Anyway, your first four receivers are locked, right? But there's other guys on the bottom half of the roster who are trying to make this team. There's Zach Davidson, there's McGurdy. There's other tight ends that are trying to make an impact with this roster. And when you got quarterbacks like Mitch Trubisky and especially Buechele that are not getting on the ball timely or is completely inaccurate, you're hurting getting an opportunity to see what you have from the other guys as well on your football team. So backup quarterback position, sure. You're done if your starter gets hurt. In this case, if it was Josh Allen. But I do not whatsoever like the fact that that these quarterbacks are playing terrible. And in the case of Buechele, I would almost be shocked at this point if he ends up making this roster. When they're not making the roster, I'm sorry. Even being on the practice squad, I would not be surprised at all if the Bills look to upgrade there. Punting. Sam Martin's spot on this team. Do not take a Sharpie and write him down on the 53-man roster. He's the only punter on the roster right now. I get that, but I do not think his spot is secure. A couple good punts, but he also had a punt at 34 yards. It was shanked. He had a 29-yard punt into the wind and all, but still, you can't count on this guy, man. And it's kind of becoming obvious. A little surprised they cut Browning when they did, which, by the way, maybe they bring him back. But if it's not him, I think Brandon Beane's going to be focused hardcore on the waiver wire. And it would not surprise me whatsoever if Sam Martin doesn't end up making this roster. Just generally speaking about this game, when I reflect on it, preseason or not, it just didn't look like they played particularly hard. And I know that's like, oh, it's preseason. Yeah. I get it. But you can't help but think about it's a new roster, new leadership. Nothing really to worry about per se, especially based on a preseason opener, but it doesn't alleviate leadership concerns. Like it felt like this team just they didn't have that juice, man. It just didn't seem that excited to even be out there and play. And again, I'm not being a conspiracy theorist here. I'm not trying to stir up drama. I know what this is. I know this is week one of the preseason, but Sean McDermott coach teams. I mean, they'll shit the bed sometimes, but typically second, third unit teams just play hard and keep games close, and often they find a way to pull it out. And again, it's whatever. But this game didn't. At the end of the day, this game did not feel like a building block for the Buffalo Bills of any sorts. And if you disagree, let me know. Like, what part of what you saw on Saturday would you consider a really good building block? I'm having a hard time coming up with anything of relevance, of significance. I said this at the top too. I think there's actually two winners from this game whose stock might rise who didn't even play. And those two guys are Chase Claypool and Ty Johnson. Chase Claypool's stock, I think, rose because MVS had a drop, because KJ Hamler fumbled a punt. And Andy Isabella didn't do anything. Chase Claypool's been out. I think he's missed 6 or 7 practices, but I feel like he's close. I wouldn't be surprised if he's back, especially he's playing Pittsburgh. He wants to get back next week. They're playing Pittsburgh. They also have a joint practice with them next Thursday. I'm sure that he wants to be out there. And I think there might be an opportunity because nobody has separated themselves. Even Shavers. I mean, look, I know Shavers has been a great camp story and he's a valuable special teams guy, but Shavers didn't do anything on Saturday to kind of give you that wow moment to separate himself as well. So Chase Claypool with this injury could have been buried. If MVS goes as a 75-yard play, if Shavers makes a big play, whether it's receiving or a big special teams play, maybe that knocks down Chase Claypool's stock a little bit more, but none of that happened. So I feel like he's right in the mix. In terms of Ty Johnson, unlike Chase Claypool, Ty Johnson's making his football team. Is he going to be RB2 or RB3? I don't know. But one thing I think, at least anyway, with the kick returns, I think Ty Johnson is going to be out there, and a way to get him more used on this football team is to return kicks. And if Hamler or Hardy aren't going to step up and show you something, that probably leads Sean McDermott to saying, well, I trust Ty Johnson. He's returned kicks before. He's going to be the guy who returns kicks. So by not even playing when it comes to him getting an opportunity, maybe to be the kick returner, I kind of felt like he was the winner. All right, real quick here before we get out of here, my preseason game 1 awards: MVP, Khalil Shakir; LVP, everyone on the Buffalo Bills offensive line, everybody on the Buffalo Bills offensive line. The good, Austin Johnson, Curtis Samuel, Javon Sullivan. The bad, the entire Buffalo Bills offensive line, bad. The Bills, bottom of the roster defense, like especially that third unit, just really couldn't get anything going. And then the quarterbacks, Michelle and Mitch Trubisky, both bad. The ugly, 2 bad Sam Martin punts, the MVS drop, the Michelle pick 6, and the Buffalo Bills entire offensive line. One thing I liked, haven't talked about him all day. Maybe we'll talk about him more throughout the week, especially after I get a chance to really go back and watch a little bit of film. Ray Davis in the passing game, breaking a few tackles. He caught a pass. Maybe my favorite play of the first half. He caught a ball in the middle, broke a tackle, and got the first down. That's the Ray Davis that I could see Joe Brady envisioning, saying this could be a guy who really helps. I know he had a nice blitz pickup as well. I've said it before. I think Ray Davis's role on this team potentially could be Latavius Murray, but not 33-year-old Latavius Murray that fell off a cliff near the end of last season. A younger, with much more juice version by being with Ray Davis here. So I liked what I saw with him. What I didn't like, the Buffalo Bills entire offensive line. Just, it is what it is, man. It was a bad, bad performance by the Bills. Oh well. A couple quick nuggets and we're out. Kendall Williamson. I thought it was a little bit telling anyway that he got safety reps before Delaney, Kareem Jackson, Burgess, 3 veteran safeties that are on this roster. Williamson got reps. I don't think really any of them make the roster, assuming Edwards and Bishop both could get back before the season and don't end up on IR. But it was a nice nod to him having a pretty good camp. However, I think he also hurt his stock with a really dumb, stupid, quite frankly, a cheap shot personal foul penalty. So it didn't help his stock there at all. Zach Davidson, a guy we've been talking about a lot over the last couple of weeks, a big camp darling, 0 snaps on offense in the first half. I think he only had 1 target and it wasn't even a catchable ball. Meanwhile, Quentin Morris played plenty earlier in the game in the first half. Should have had a touchdown. It was wide open, but Mr. Trubisky air-throwed it, or AML'd it, I should say, into the end zone. A lot of people thought Zach Davidson might have the edge on Quentin Morris. I would suggest that this game tells you otherwise. Gable Stevenson got some snaps, but he is buried on this depth chart, by the way. Like Brandon Dean, who's somebody I forgot was even on this football team, he got snaps before Stevenson. Stevenson did have 1 nice pass rush, but aside from that, he was pretty lost out there, and it was obvious. Trying to find the ball where, he's getting pushed around some, which literally his first football game of his life. So can't sit there and be overly critical of Gabe Stevenson. I think the ceiling for him realistically is to show enough that he can warrant taking up one of the 17 spots or whatever it is now on the Bills practice squad. Last thing, not a huge deal, but I liked that Tyler Bass nailed a 49-yard field goal. Who knows, if that helps him confidence-wise going into the season or not, but, that kick was by no means make or break. But for a meaningless opening preseason game, 49 yards, I'm pretty sure that we are watching that a little more intently than we would with other kickers from other teams. Like if he would have missed it badly, I feel like the buzz would have grown a little bit on Tyler Bass. So it was nice to see him make that 49-yard field goal. Final thoughts, look, not alarmed, but I certainly am alerted anyway to some potential shortcomings of this team. I don't feel any better about the safety position than I did before Saturday. I don't feel any better about the depth of the offensive line before I did on Saturday. And I absolutely do not feel any better about the quarterback position than I did on Saturday. I could bring up the wide receivers, but at the end of the day, I think they're pretty deep. They're going to be fine. Samuel's good. Shakir's good. Keon Coleman's going to be fine. Matt Collins will be out there doing some things. He didn't play this week. He'll be fine. And then, of course, you got Kincaid, Knox, Cook, Davis. Plenty of guys to catch the football. Not worried about the bottom part of the wide receiver depth, especially since they either won't even be active or they'll be primarily special teams guys. But yeah, safety, offensive line depth, quarterback, my radar is up for sure. Now, just the general bad vibes, the kind of like lazy kind of feeling that it felt like the Bills, the effort that was out there in front of their fans, shit could be erased quickly. Again, it's preseason, Pittsburgh coming up this week. You can go out, you play well. They got a joint practice on Thursday. I'm sure we'll see some highlights from that from the Buffalo media. And then they got a game Saturday. Just go out, play better. And then this week ultimately will mean nothing. But anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. Like I said, Joe from Queens is going to be on with me tomorrow. He'll have some thoughts on this game. I'm sure some bigger picture thoughts, some rants. He hates the preseason. I'm sure he's going to hate the fact that I'm even going to bring up shit from the preseason, but I will be doing that. We'll start to look ahead to Pittsburgh, and we'll talk about plenty of other stuff as well. For me, Patrick Moran, I do thank you again very much. Thank you for listening, for watching, following, subscribing, and I'll be back. Brand new episodes coming tomorrow.